I'm at the Trump rally and somebody just started shooting. What just happened? Oh my God.
And those who were at the campaign rally were cheering on Trump, and they say that they sprang into action.
I was attending the rally. It seemed initially like firecrackers went off. It was very confusing initially because, I knew it was gunfire, but I couldn't quite tell where it was coming from. It sounded like it was coming from behind the bleachers. And the man in the bleachers, kind of to the right of me in the bleachers, took a gunshot wound to the head, was killed. And another woman, I don't know exactly where she was in the bleachers. I think she was either behind me or to the right of me. She got around she got hit in the forearm and hand, it looked like. Family watched it happen.
July 13th, 2024. A hot summer evening in Butler, Pennsylvania. Thousands of people packed into the fairgrounds, waiting to see Donald Trump take the stage. Trump appeared confident, in control, leaning into the microphone as the crowd roared back at him. Families waved flags. Volunteers smiled. Cameras rolled. But not everyone was looking at the stage. Across the rally grounds, the American Glass Research Building loomed overhead. Its rooftop had been flagged as a possible security risk. Yet on this night, it was left unguarded. Witnesses would later say they saw movement.
Pointing at the guy, crawling up the roof.
And he had a gun, right?
He had a rifle. We could clearly see him with a rifle. The police are down there running around on the ground. We're like, hey man, there's a guy on the roof with a rifle. And the police are like, huh, what? Like they didn't know what was going on.
But inside the rally, no one noticed. And then, a sharp crack. The crowd froze.
That's a little bit old, that chart. That chart's a couple of months old, and if you want to really see something that's said, take a look at what happened.
When the chaos cleared, all eyes turned to the rooftop. There lay the gunman, killed by a Secret Service sniper. His name was Thomas Matthew Crooks, just 20 years old. From Bethel Park, Pennsylvania. A young man with no criminal record. No history of violence. To his neighbors, he was quiet. Forgettable. The kid down the street you barely noticed. Yet here he was, carrying an AR-15 style rifle, ammunition, and equipment for something far bigger than a random act. Crooks had legally purchased the weapon. He had scouted the rooftop beforehand. He knew the vantage point gave him a clear shot at Trump. But what he didn't leave behind was a reason. No manifesto. No video explaining his actions. Nothing but contradictions. A registered Republican who once made a tiny donation to a Democratic group. A suburban kid who somehow became an assassin. The FBI called it an act of domestic terrorism. But even they admitted the motive was still a mystery. America now had a name. But it didn't have an answer. As investigators dug deeper, the focus shifted. Yes, Crooks fired the shots. But how did he ever get the chance? The answer: failure. A bipartisan House task force later called it a preventable tragedy. Because Crooks didn't sneak past barriers. He didn't disguise himself. He simply walked into position, climbed a rooftop, and no one stopped him. The report revealed brutal facts. That rooftop was marked as a risk, but left unsecured. Witnesses spotted Crooks crawling with a bag.
This is the video I'm talking about, showing a Butler Township, Pennsylvania police officer climbing up on the roof before immediately dropping back down. Potentially because there was concern that the shooter could turn his rifle on the officer. There's no audio from that moment, but some video later captures the officer's immediate reaction to what he saw. Listen to this.
Door's closed, bro. Dude, he turned around on me. Seriously, he was right where you picked me up, bro. He was on that left side.
Their warnings didn't trigger a response in time. Local police and Secret Service agents failed to share critical information in the final moments. The timeline was damning. At 6:09 p.m., Crooks was spotted. At 6:11, he opened fire. Those 2 minutes cost lives. Corey Comparator, a volunteer fire chief and father, was killed protecting his family. 2 others critically wounded. Trump himself only inches away from death. And all of it, experts said, could have been stopped. The aftermath was grief and disbelief. Images of Trump with blood streaked across his face, raising his fist defiantly, spread worldwide. To his supporters, it was proof of strength. Proof that he would never back down. But the rallygoers didn't leave with pride. They left with pain. Vigils honored Corey Comparator. Firefighters across Pennsylvania draped flags in black. His family, who had been by his side, became symbols of sacrifice. For a brief moment, America stood together. President Joe Biden condemned the attack.
But the bottom line is that the Trump rally was a rally that he should have been able to be conducted peacefully without any problem. But the idea that there's political violence or violence in America like this is just unheard of. It's just not appropriate. Everybody must condemn it. Everybody.
Former presidents have also condemned the assassination attempt. George W. Bush calling it a cowardly attack. Bill Clinton saying he and Hillary were thankful Mr. Trump was safe. And from Barack Obama, we should all be relieved that former President Trump wasn't seriously hurt, and use this moment to recommit ourselves to civility and respect in our politics.
Leaders across both parties called for calm. Even foreign nations expressed shock. But unity faded fast. On social media, conspiracy theories exploded. Was Crooks really alone? Did security fail, or did something darker happen? Instead of healing, the shooting deepened divisions. And while investigators scrambled to close gaps in security, another storm was already brewing. Because just 2 months later, another man would try again.
News this Sunday night, a new apparent assassination attempt on Donald Trump's life. The gunshots fired at his golf club.
Today, had there been a gunfight, we were ready to engage.
Yeah, Carolyn, this happened around 1:30 in the afternoon local time. We understand the former president was actually moving between holes on the golf course when one of the agents who was moving in front of him to essentially clear the security perimeter before the next hole actually saw what he believed to be the barrel of a gun sticking out of the bushes. It was at that point that he then engaged with the suspect, who police now say was armed with an AK-47 style rifle with a scope.
His name was Ryan Wesley Routh, 58 years old. Armed with an SKS-style rifle. He had scouted the course. He had a clear line of sight. But this time, the Secret Service spotted him before he could fire. Routh was arrested on the spot. Unlike Crooks, he lived. And what investigators found was chilling. Routh carried a letter saying he had failed the world by not killing Trump in Butler. He offered money for someone else to finish the job. He carried lists of Trump's appearances, ammunition, tools. This was no random act.
Now, in the bushes where this guy was is an AK-47 style rifle with a scope, 2 backpacks which were hung on the fence that had ceramic tile in them, and a GoPro, which he was going to take pictures of. What they do is they have an agent that jumps 1 hole ahead of time to where the president was at. And he was able to spot this rifle barrel sticking out of the fence and immediately engage that individual, at which time the individual took off. And we had units here that immediately sealed off the area. Fortunately, we were able to locate a witness that came to us and said, hey, I saw the guy running out of the bushes. He jumped into a black Nissan, and I took a picture of the vehicle and the tag, which was great.
It was planned, methodical, intentional. The Department of Justice indicted him for attempted assassination of a former president. In court, he pleaded not guilty. But to America, the verdict was already clear. 2 attempts, 2 months apart. This wasn't a fluke.
No, that's a little bit old, that chart. That chart's a couple of months old, and if you want to really see something that said, take a look at what happened.
2 men. 2 attempts. 2 near misses. The Butler shooting left 1 dead, 2 wounded, and the world shaken. The Florida plot proved the threat wasn't over. A bipartisan task force later put it in writing: America's leaders are in grave danger. The failures in Butler were preventable. The lessons from Florida, urgent. The Secret Service promised reforms: drones, rooftop surveillance, AI monitoring, tighter coordination with local police. But the public had already seen the cracks. If 2 men could get this close, what about the next? For Trump, the attacks reshaped his image. To his base, he became more than a candidate. He became a survivor? Someone who had literally bled for his campaign. The raised fist, the blood, the chaos, all became part of his political legend. For history, the events of 2024 now sit beside Dallas in 1963, Los Angeles in 1968, Washington in 1981. Moments when violence collided with politics. And for America, the message was clear. Democracy can be as fragile as the distance between a rooftop rifle and a podium. This was not the first attempt on a US president. And many fear it won't be the last.